Hey, so when did you first vote? Do you remember your first election that you voted in? Were you 18, 25, 75? Have you ever voted? Hey, so today I get to talk to Lisa Fontana. She's an average American who kept a deep, dark secret. She didn't cast her first vote for anything until she turned, get this, 35 years old. She tried to buy a book to teach her about politics or government so she can vote with confidence. The bookstore shelves sadly were lined with negativity, and all of them played the blame game. You're not right, you're wrong, all that. So instead, she decided to research it herself and put the pieces together on her own and then figured it out. So she's got an unwavering dedication to judgment-free, balanced information and a lot of fun and wit. And she is the author of the book, Me, the People, which is super fun. And I'm super excited to talk to her about politics. What's up, Lisa?
Hey, hi. How you doing today, Phil? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for being here. So, hey, I got to ask, right, 35. So why at 35 did you think it was important to vote?
It's not that I ever didn't think it was important. It's that when you go through education system for 12 years and no one ever teaches you like civics or that it exists or that it's important, you graduate not even knowing it's a thing you're supposed to be involved in. And at 35, somebody got elected that I didn't like because of it was President George Bush, and it's not a Republican or Democrat thing. I didn't like. I knew people in Hurricane Katrina, and I thought I did a bad job. And I said, geez, they shouldn't have revoted it. He didn't deserve a second term. And throughout that 12-hour day, I realized, oh, you didn't vote. You're a non-voter. Maybe people like you should. You just kind of tumbled into this reality that I was actually not part of democracy, and I realized I would like to fix that.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I had a lot of civics, but I was a social studies nerd, and I probably took way more than I needed to growing up and thought I was eventually going to be a social studies teacher. But I know a lot of people who don't know anything about how things are elected. I mean, the Electoral College is confusing to a lot of people. So let's talk a little bit about kind of what is in the book here, because I think it's interesting that it is not just kind of about like, hey, vote for this person or that person, which is great, right? I really like that, because if it was, I wouldn't have you on the show, because that's not what we're talking about, right? But so how do you educate yourself? Yeah, so talk to us about how we get started here along this path.
The reason I wrote the book is because after I taught myself so I could go vote, other people started confessing to me quietly that they didn't vote. I was embarrassed for so long, but once I figured it out, I just started being a little bit more open. And then people would quietly confess this to me. And so I started sharing my notes, which used to be just like a binder, was just a binder of information. And I shared it with people. And then over time, I realized, oh, if the book isn't on the shelf for you to buy, probably you were meant to write it. And so I put together all the pieces I thought that anyone like me would need to just feel confident. Because so often people use words we've never heard of, democracy, even civics, citizenship, community. It's so overwhelming because the people who know this stuff don't understand why regular people didn't get to that same place. And so the shaming, the blaming, and quite frankly, the condescension that comes with it has people like me hiding. And if I wanted people not to feel like they had to hide, then I had to be a bit more honest with them. And so I put together this book, which is really small, short, fast reading. We cover topics like how to register to vote, how to avoid the pitfalls of the polling place, and then my favorite, how to have a political conversation or stop one without bloodshed. Because if you've never done this before, you need a basic history structure. You need a basic understanding of how the three branches work. And then you need to feel confident walking into a polling place. By the way, the 92 million people I talk to, they don't even know what a polling place is. That is the level to which we have stopped teaching civics in our country. And so that's what I did with the book. And I made it really short and really easy. And if you notice, I put a smiley face on it, because if you walk into the bookshelves to buy something, everybody's unhappy. And I discuss parties so that people know what a party is, and to make sure people know they're not in the Constitution. There's no such thing. They don't exist. They're decisions made outside of that. So you can vote, you can get involved in your government without ever having to pick a side. You can just be an American who gets to look at what they see, decide on it, and then you can act on it or not act on it, depending on how you choose to do.
Interesting. That's so interesting. Yeah, the whole part about talking about politics without bloodshed, I think that's underrated, Lisa. It really is. Because I mean, I look at my Facebook feed and I think, I want to kill somebody. They're horrible. People are mean, right? I mean, I want bloodshed because these people are they're mean and they make it personal and they make it hurt, right? So how do we get started on that conversation? Let's start there and let's talk about the rest of the book.
Oh, I'd love to. Oh, here's what we do before COVID, I used to do these seminars live and we go to the library and I would get people to come in. My alter ego is Citizen Cupcakes. And the reason I created her is because this is such a difficult topic for people who either abhor politics or feel like they were never taught enough. Either way, nobody wants to walk in that room to learn more about what you've got. So I created a character, cupcakes on my head, nothing but fun. We give away stressy, squishy balls, and I give people cupcakes to have that very conversation, that whole section. And I bring up two willing participants. I try to keep it to people who have no political affiliation. And we have a very lively debate. I'm telling you, you're going to think it doesn't get out of control. It does. On unicorns, on whether or not you can fly. If you're a unicorn, do you need secret wings? Are they magical? What do you think of the horn? The whole goal of that is to show people that we don't know how to communicate already. So before you add in the craziness of politics, we have to learn mutual respect, active listening, the ability to respond to someone without making it personal, and then understanding the difference between moral and political. Moral is about the behaviors of people as human beings. Political is how you feel and how you vote regarding the art and science of government. We're judging people politically into their moral life, and they're really not the same. Plus, when you go online, I tell everybody, if you want a happy life, stay off social media. Don't engage, because the only people who go on social media are going on to start trouble. So when you tumble into something innocently and you think, oh, I'll weigh in, there is very rarely is there another person like you who's going to have a lively discussion. They're only going to go out of their way to make you feel bad. Plus, we live in a world now where we don't teach the art of conversation anymore. So it's hard to know how to be civil when you don't know how to be respectful, when you don't know how to communicate, because you don't ever get the practice. And everyone's on their phone all the time, which makes it easy to pretend. When we were kids and your mom and dad said you had to look someone in the eye and say you're sorry and mean it, it's because it's a lot harder to treat someone badly if you have to look at them and feel how badly you feel when you see it in their face. But if you're on a cell phone, you don't ever have to feel that way. And so you're going to see it get really crazy online. So I always tell people, just be smart, don't start. If you can avoid Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, as far as conversation, go look for fun pictures. But I would caution you to avoid leaning in, because if nothing else, you're going to ruin your own day for absolutely no reason, because somebody who you wouldn't sit next to on a bus or have a drink with because they're not polite, you're giving them all this accidental credit and control over your day to feel angry, frustrated, upset. Does that make sense?
That's so interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. It's comical to think that, well, yeah, it's hard, right? But it's comical to think about, the difference between growing up and your parents saying, hey, you got to say you're sorry and you got to mean it. You got to look the neighbor kid in the face and say, yep, I'm sorry that I punched you in the face. Mm-hmm. As opposed to now, I mean, all the time people post. I mean, I've even got a Facebook group that I'm part of that is talking about, cultural conversations that is not as friendly as we'd like it to be, because people are on both sides. It's really, really interesting that even culturally, it's so different to do. So, Lisa, I think it's kind of pie in the sky to think that people aren't going to do that, though. So how do we, without just avoiding it, how do we be more civilized online? How do we be more civilized with people?
If you're going to be online, the first thing I just will caution you is, if you're already listening to this to learn how you can be better online, know that you're the only person that's going to be in that online conversation who is being more civilized. So you have to just get comfortable. I spend a lot of my time when I post, my work is to joyously welcome people to their country. My goal is to tap into, I call it dynamicism. And dynamicism is when you are so dynamic and we've encased it inside of you because we're not letting it out. So if you come in and you get comfy in your country and I show you how you can be wonderfully, you can take all your value inside and you can give it out to your community, your family, your state, and your country. Once we crack that open, you have to know everybody's going to attack it. And so you just have to get comfortable with that. Look for people like myself who are always going to be that beacon of, hey, if you're having a great day, come see me. If you're having a bad day, come see me to feel better. When you get somebody who is rude to you, you have to know the difference between somebody who's just being rude because they disagree with you or being rude because they are a bad online person. So you can try active listening. It's hard to do when you're texting, but say, I hear what you have to say, and here's my response. When someone responds negatively, this one can often help. Sometimes they'll just leave, but either way, it's okay. And it's, I learned it from Jack Canfield. When you, I imagine, and it makes me feel. When you say, all Democrats are horrible, all Republicans belong in hell, I imagine you think that of someone like me who is a normal average person just trying to live her life. And it makes me feel like, and then explain how you feel. Sometimes you will have somebody actually respond to that and say, no, that's not what I meant at all. And then of course, sometimes you'll have people who are going to be really rude. You, as long as you can put your focus on the fact that never, ever let somebody else's opinion of you matter to who you are and what you're doing. If you can let that go, then you're free to use these techniques online. And if you can't, then again, I would say no online for you, like me. I stay off of it. And I work cupcakes for a living on my head. Believe me, there are lots and lots of people who take a lot of shots at me. I'm okay with it because I know there's 92 million people out there who need what I do. And for them, I'm willing to stand up. If you don't need that in your day, then yes, do anything you can to not be in a bad conversation.
Yeah. No, that's solid advice. I'll buy that. So one of the things though that you say is about avoiding the media, which I think is really interesting. Like how do we avoid the media and still be informed? I mean, that's like saying, you don't have to learn how to read. That
Yes.
to me. So tell me about this.
You're still getting involved in the media. The difference is when you watch television, particularly, well, I think it's everyone at this point. 40 years ago, we had over 50 media companies. Now we're down to 4. So the message gets to be completely and exactly what maybe 4 people want it to be every day. I find that something to immediately distrust. No 4 people should be in charge of the message, and they are. It's a Disney Corp, Media Cast. There's 2 others. I can't think of them, but just they're just so that's too small for a country with big ideas and people with the ability to do great things. So of course, I'm not saying that you have to not listen to the media, but what we discuss in the welcome parties we do online and also even more so in the book is the ability to understand how to look at the media. I think a lot of us assume that if we read it in a book or we read it online or Facebook told me that we're just supposed to assume that it's true. And that is where we stop. So I have this fun portion in the videos where we talk about the supervillain, they say. And it's they say the water in Flint, Michigan is safe to drink. They say that the murder rate is the highest it's been in 40 years. The way to start combating that, instead of just assuming that whatever you've been told is real, you get to come back and say, now, who is they? Who did that study? Who was that reporter? Where did they get those facts and figures? Do I trust the people who gave those facts and figures? Start to ask those questions so that the amount of times that there are retractions or corrections that are put out, that's almost daily. So if you listened to something yesterday and they've corrected it the next day, you're living through a day where you thought what was incorrect is correct. So we talk about different ways to avoid just blindly sharing that information with others, to avoid having to just accept that info. And then I show you where to go. I recommend everybody, and it's hard. We're all busy. I mean, busy. It's been a rough, rough couple of years for everyone. When you want to learn something, you really need to read the article. if you've watched general TV, they'll always say, oh, in the New York Times today, in the Washington Post, it was reported. They take a gigantic 6-page article and they dwindle it down to a 1-minute segment. You only get about 25% of the story if you're watching TV. So can you imagine something's going on in your family, or you're getting family gossip, or something's happened to a friend and you only get 25% of the story? Now make a decision. Who's going to do that? So just giving yourself the ability to look and say, I can see this. So I always say that I do it with political parties as well. If there is a building on fire and it sits in the middle of 2 counties, and from one county comes one police chief or fire chief, and from the other comes the other fire chief. Now, they might disagree on how to put out that fire. But when they disagree on whether or not the fire is burning, that's when we have to start applying our own logic and being able to say, hang on, what you're telling me and what I'm understanding based on what I see are not the same, and giving you the freedom to know you're smart and you can trust you. It'd be nice if we could trust everyone else. We could just trust that things would go right for us. We could just trust it's always handled. But I think we all know by now that it's best if we go ahead and just man our lives, I know, a full 100%.
That's beautiful. No, I agree. I think that's really important. And we have to equip ourselves to look at different things. So have you ever, this is not in your book or anything, but I'm curious, have you ever seen the Ground News app? Have you ever heard of it?
I'm not sure I've heard of it. A Ground News app?
Yeah, so it's called Ground News. What it does is it takes the main stories of the day, and it'll actually show you what the far left is reporting, what the center is reporting, and what the right is reporting. And it's a good way that I've found. My friend Shelley Kramer introduced me to it, and it allows me to see the different stories as they are, so that I can make a more informed decision. So I can see which way they lean. And I found that this has been really helpful as I'm trying to equip myself, to your point about doing the research myself and trusting myself. I find that instead of reading just one story or 2 stories, often I can read 3, 4, or 5 stories about the big things. And it's a lot more helpful, because that way, to your point, I don't feel as swayed. I am able to trust myself more. And instead of having to, avoid the media, which I know that's not what you're really suggesting here, but it allows me to really lean in and see, what is really happening here? Is the building really burning?
Yes.
Or is there a building in another state that's burning? Is this stock footage from 2008 and not from today that helps me with that? So I think that's one way that I do it. And I find that that's really helpful, but I really like your insight there. Yeah. Dave just posted, Ground News app. Yep. So absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
There's a new network opening of WGN News. I'm from Chicago, so they are world's greatest news from back in the day. They've started a network, and it begins on, I want to say, September 1st or 3rd. And what they do there, they're admitting this is their attempt to report unbiased news. So they have a panel of 11 people whose job it will be to scan the copy and make sure that what's being presented is as close. There's no way to be unbiased. If you're alive and a human being, you're going to be biased. It's just as unbiased as you can be. That is their focus. So I'm curious to see if it's going to cause any issues regarding once you can start comparing on the same night that you could see the same story on WGN versus the same story on Fox versus the same story on CNN. I'm curious to see just with the same information, how we all see things.
Yeah, I am too. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more here about process, because I think it's important that we talk about that. If people are thinking, hey, I haven't voted, or, I'm really not sure, maybe I just go vote straight party ticket because that's what my parents said to do, or because that's what my spouse has said to do. So one of the things in your book in chapter 8 is all about the election process. So talk to us about that and why understanding that is so darn important.
Well, for me, it was important. I just found it freeing. The idea that my mom voted a certain way and my dad voted a certain way, and then you just grow up in a culture where that's just what you do. Not being able to question. I think that's one of the most dangerous things that we've created, is a culture where if you're a Republican, you cannot listen to anything that a Democrat says. And if you are a Democrat, you literally are supposed to have some kind of hatred for a Republican. And if you're a kid, if you've ever seen the book or read it with your parents, it's called this All the Sneetches on the Beaches. It's a terrific Dr. Seuss book, and the whole point of it was to make fun of how we all make these decisions. That certain Sneetches, they had stars on their tummies, and certain didn't. And in order to fit in, some of them changed, and then some of them changed back, and then by the end, no one knew who anybody was, and they got forced to actually just start listening to each other. So a good idea is a good idea, whether it came out of the head of someone who is a known Democrat or a known Republican or a Tea Party, Green Party, independent. So giving yourself that freedom to say, I can absolutely think I'm a conservative or I am more liberal. But when it comes to looking at who's running, I can look and decide if I think that person is the right person for the job. In this case, we're electing a president. We elect dozens and dozens and dozens of people every single year because we have local community, we have state elections, and then we have these giant federal elections. So there's always someone to be taking a close look at. And when you straight ticket vote, which of course you're free to do, that's your decision. But if you're thinking about maybe changing how you vote, and you're thinking if you've never voted before or you haven't voted in a while, if you want to come on back, I have found a lot of great fun in taking the control. As we live in a democracy, which is a government of, by, and for the people. Many other countries don't live the way we do, which is extraordinarily free and able to kind of control our own country based on what we choose to do. And part of choosing is voting. So taking that opportunity to compare and contrast candidates, which I think most people do a terrible job of showing us where to go and what to do. And we don't. I show you some places to go, and I walk you through how to get a sample ballot, all because I want you to have that freedom to say, I'm going to vote for a Democrat over here because I like Jerry. I'm going to vote for a Republican over there because I think Sue has some pretty good ideas. I believe it gives you freedom, understanding that process where you no longer have to be swayed. Last night I watched the conventions. And the first thing I said to myself when Joe Biden, former Vice President Joe Biden spoke, oh, that tie, who tied it for him? It doesn't have the right dimple. It's supposed to have the dimple. These are not reasons to judge someone. Not liking their hair. It's like a swimsuit competition. These are not reasons to think someone's good or not good. But we are all easily swayed the less we understand the process. And so feeling like when you know what it means to vote, what a primary is, what a midterm election is, what a general election is, when you know what that means, when you get a feel for what electoral votes are, it's complicated. But to just understand within your state that every state has so many electoral ballots or so many electoral votes, it's freeing to start to get the gist of how it functions so you know how your vote counts. And then I find that there's a lot of freedom and control in making sure that I vote for who I want to vote for. When you look at a giant list of circuit court judges, 15 judges are running, well, hopefully you've never had a reason to know if they're a good judge or not, right? Because you've never had to go to court. But if you want to vote for them, being forced to vote in some kind of straight ticket, I find very restrictive. And I find it more freeing to feel like, oh, I get this now. I understand why they say that or why they're doing that or why they're trying to confuse me over here. You start to feel comfortable seeing a commercial and going, ooh, wait a minute. Lisa Ann taught me how to dissect a commercial. Now I can see it. Now I can look into it. And now I can make my own decision. I find it very freeing rather than kind of standing back in the shadows. I find that very oppressive. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. So lots of education there, lots of things to learn, lots of things we could learn. But now let's fast forward to November. Election day is here. So that's one of the most important chapters in your book, I find. Election day is here. So now what, Lisa? Wrap this up for us. Now what do we do that election day is here?
Excellent. So I'm going to back you up about 4 weeks from Election Day and say that November 3rd is the last day to vote. So that's the date in the Constitution, is the first Tuesday of the month. We go in and vote. But on Election Day, we have doctors and nurses who have to go to the office, and we have people who have to pump our gas, and people who have to be out policing, and people who are poll workers. We have to have normal life going on. It's not a national holiday, and even if it were, how many of us still need to get our local shot at Starbucks? who's serving that to you? Someone who's not going to be able to vote that day. So there is, separate of that day voting, there is early voting, which is where you are, depending on your state, they have polling places open certain times of the day during every week, and they start however many weeks before the election. And I'm going to show you where to go to get that info. So you can early vote. And also there's less people. I'm suggesting early voting because I want everyone to be safe. We had a COVID death in our family, and I would do anything in my power to help you avoid that tragedy. So early voting gives you that. Separate from that, mail-in ballots, they are safe. You can forget about what's on TV and let me just take a look. And we're putting out a video, I think early next week, that walks everyone through how to fill out a mail-in ballot. And again, I'll give you the location to go request one online so that you can pre-vote. I like mail-in ballots because you can sit with your ballot, look everything up on the computer, make a decision, and you get to fill out each circle until you're done. Put it back, and you can either mail it or you can drive it to your supervisor of elections office. And they have, just like if you're dropping off your water bill, they have a place where you can drop off right into the slot. And then you're done. You even get your I voted sticker in the mail. If you're going to go on voting day on November 3rd, then I always tell everybody, I want you to pack a meal, something to drink, and one of these, because you're going to have to be patient because the lines can be long. And then wait your turn. Go in. You can check ahead of time to see what you have to bring, depending on your state. In Illinois, you don't need to bring anything, but in Florida, you need to bring your state ID. So you can go in, you get your ballot, you cast your ballot, you'll get your sticker, and then you get to leave. So it's less complicated and a lot more fun. Voting by mail is a little quiet, but voting in person, if you're a first-time voter, everybody will cheer for you. So if you want to be cheered for, that's the place to go.
Cheering. I've never seen cheering. That's fun though.
Really?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I've never seen any cheering going on, but I guess I voted in a little town where everybody knew my name. So that's probably why.
Well, depending on your age, if you're just turning 18 and this is your first big vote, or a lot of new moms come in and haven't ever voted before, so they get to hold the babies, and everybody gets, they do a lot of first time. Yay.
Yeah.
As well we should.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Lisa, if there's anything else as we bring this home here, anything else you want people to know about voting or about politics that they can't even find in the book, or that you have as insight, or anything at all, what would that be?
I would say go to our YouTube channel, because we've got the 60-second civics program. It's going to be 100 videos when it's done, and it's all 100 questions that will be asked of an immigrant when they take their citizenship test. And we will not test you. This is just an opportunity for you to learn at 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes here and there every day. In the end of a year, without any effort at all, you could know everything you need to know about working and living and having citizenship in your country. Every Saturday night from now until the election, we run our own online welcome party. It's a lot of fun. It's about 1 hour and 20 minutes. It's free. We'd love for you to join us. You can find us at Facebook. If you just go to my website, methepeoplevote.com, you can find us there. You just click on Facebook, and right at the top, you can register, or you could just come 7 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays. And that's where we answer any questions you've got. And then we just go through our program of doing everything to make you feel comfy in your country.
Awesome. So folks, get comfy in your country. Vote. It is your civic duty, especially if you're educated about it. Don't vote because you feel obligated, but do vote as an educated person. Check Lisa Ann out. Go to methepeoplevote.com. She's got an awesomely helpful book and lots of videos, as she mentioned, 7 p.m. Eastern Saturdays. You can check her out on Facebook, but go to methepeoplevote.com. It will help you. If you're confused, this is a place to go. So Lisa, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. This was a lot of fun and very educational. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks so much. See you soon.